Hi everybody, I'm Lodo from Fridays for Future Milano and welcome to the first step of this climate open platform. An approach from the bottom and the movement to the Youth for Climate and Pre-COP summits, which will be hosted in our city in September. And we are also very happy to host this first meeting in a special place, SMS, Spazio di Mutuo Soccorso, aka Mutual Aid Place. And to show you what it is, we have done a little short video that now we'll show you. So enjoy it and thank you and see you later. Ci siamo?
SMS, Spazio di Mutuo Soccorso, is a mutual aid project that takes place in a huge headquarters in Milan. This experience was born in 2013 thanks to a committee for city rights against eviction and gentrification. In this place, SMS, there are different projects. A popular gym, a swap market that fights fast fashion and promotes recycle and reuse, a popular university with different courses and a languages school, a buying collective that connects customers with farmers of the area, a playground for children, a bicycle repair, and much, much more.
SMS is a resistant community in which inhabitants and volunteers cooperate to build up an experience outside of market and business logics, in which exchanges and solidarity are the guidelines to reach autonomy and freedom. The mutual aid space is a place where the circular economy is experimented. The clothes are reused and brought back to life. The garden in the courtyard provides products for food distribution to the needy. The Solidarity and Popular Purchase Group puts small agricultural producers and customers in contact, avoiding the large-scale distribution chain.
For these reasons, SMS is the ideal place to host the first of a series of conferences about climate justice. A place free from the market dynamics that lead us to the climate crisis. A place that with its own existence is a proof that another world is possible. A beacon of hope that promises to lead us in the right direction.
Hi everyone, I'm going to make a short introduction and then we can start with the rest of the speeches. So, why are we here? The COP is supposed to be the supreme decision-making body by the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. So when I think about the meaning of a decision, I immediately picture a process that starts with a problem, creates a debate, reaches an agreed and reasoned conclusion, and is followed by an action to solve the problem. However, the COPs have been taking place every year since 1995, and after 26 years, no meaningful action has taken place. The only constants have been a continuous increase in emissions, overconsumption, as if buying, using, and throwing away were the only thing that could make humans happy and developed, and the relentless extraction of natural resources and destruction of biodiversity, and the indifferent and hypocrite exploitation on the most affected people and areas, MAPA, whose countries we are arrogantly defining as less developed countries, which have not caused the climate crisis, but are the ones already suffering its worst consequences. Because, here is a spoiler, the climate crisis is already here, and yet nothing is being done. So, can we expect this COP to be different from the previous ones? After COP 21st and the Paris Agreement, there have been words and words and words, and yet nothing has been done. We do not expect the COP and the pre-COP of this year to be different from the previous ones, as far as the discourse and the decision-making process are concerned. But we do expect this pre-COP and COP26 to be different in the pressure that the leaders in the summit will feel, in the community that we stand united outside the halls of power, and in the voices of the people from the whole world outside demanding climate justice and climate action. We always ask leaders to listen to science, which is the most important thing in such an emergency, exactly as is been more or less done with the COVID-19 pandemic. However, even in that case, we see that something is going terribly wrong. Inequality and injustice have been exacerbated both by the pandemic and by the way the vaccines are being distributed. This is particularly evident here in Milan, when I'm speaking from, where the pandemic hit us heavily, both because of the levels of pollution and because of the administration mistakes of our leaders. While conscious of the problems and the connections between the climate crisis, the loss of biodiversity, the high levels of air pollution, diffusion, and the impact of the coronavirus, our leaders continue to make the same mistakes over and over, reiterating the same patterns of inequality, extractivism, and exploitment that created the same emergency we have to face. Now, the public discourse on climate, exactly as the one on the pandemic, has evolved, and today we are all conscious that the climate crisis is much more than an environmental crisis caused by the alteration of natural cycles because of our inconsiderate lifestyles. The climate crisis is a social crisis. It's a justice crisis. It was caused by exploitment and extractivism, and if fair and equal measures aren't taken, it will cause more exploitment and extractivism. The climate crisis, human rights violation, humanitarian crisis, civil wars refoulement, gender issues, poverty, inequality, racism, and much more horrors of our time are inevitably and inextricably connected. It's not about separate issues affecting different people. Most of these issues affect the same people over and over. These dangerous and unfair tangles can only be tackled with an approach that takes them all into account and value the voices of the ones affected by them. And this approach is what we call intersectionality. The goal of the Climate Open Platform, that starts today, is to transform our narrative of intersectionality into a coherent, concrete, and collective action. This is why we tried as much as we can, and please give us advices if you thought that something was missing, to value the voices from MAPA and from subjects working on issues that are not apparently climate related, but as we saw, all these social problems are embedded in a broader system of injustice that brought the climate crisis. So we will debate together about it. We will reach agreements on our views, and we will act together, demanding climate action and climate justice to the leaders working at the pre-COP and the COP. In this COP26 will be different. So let's start by making our path different, fair and respectful of each other's opinion. Please be mindful of the people that walk with you on this path. And please be respectful and careful in your speeches today, tomorrow, and so on, and in the same way with the comments online and offline. So let's start changing the system by changing our attitudes and our behaviors. Having said that, welcome to the Climate Open Platform. This platform is now yours too. So let's make it a place of hunger and hope. And now we will have a scientist to give us the last updates on what the climate crisis is doing and what the COP could and should do. So I give the floor to Luca Mercalli. Thank you, Professor. If you prefer, digli che se vuole può parlare in italiano. Com'è andata? Devi farlo host. Raga, andate via! State fuori a parlare, per favore. Raga, qua dentro stiamo in 4 persone. second, please. We're having a problem with interpreters. Just 1 second, please. Stiamo avendo un problema con gli interpreti. Meglio in italiano, raga? Sì. Ok, in italiano.
We're sorry for this delay. Luca Mercalli is an Italian scientist. Is talking and in Italian. Unfortunately, we couldn't provide. Unfortunately, we couldn't provide a translation in English. But in a few minutes, the other guest will talk. So Mitzi Jonelle and the other Fridays for Future from other countries will join us in English. So you will be able to hear. Unfortunately now, Luca Mercalli is speaking in Italian, and we couldn't provide a translation. Anyway, right now there's gonna be a third intervention from Mitzi Jonelle, and we will have the possibility to listen to her in English. Thank you for the patience, and we will be right there soon.
Okay, welcome back everyone. Now we give the floor to an amazing Yakab activist, Mitzi. She is active in the Philippines but also internationally, and she's working very hard and powerfully with the MAPA countries which she's from, and she's going to tell us more about what we need to do to make climate justice happen for real. So, Mitzi, floor is yours. Just a second, Mitzi, please. Wait a minute, Mitzi. We're having another technical problem. Sorry. Yeah. Can you try again, Mitzi, please? Just 1, 2, 3, something like that. Just 1 second, I'm so sorry. Okay, you can go now.
Hello?
Is it okay? Yes, it works.
Should I start?
Yep.
So hey everyone, as you know, a lot of our climate activism has turned into online spaces, and so this always happens. But what's important is we're still being patient with one another and really learning to listen to each other and what we're saying. This is especially important to me because my country, the Philippines, is one of the most vulnerable countries in the world to the climate crisis. So what does that mean? Because it's very abstract, right? It means the 3 strongest storm landfalls in recorded history happened here. It means that growing up, I would have to do my homework by the candlelight because there was no electricity because of the raging typhoons outside. It means having to wake up in the middle of the night and my room would be flooded, and I'd have to scoop out flood water from my room, and would sometimes mean that I'm afraid of drowning in my own bedroom. This is the reality of the climate crisis in countries like the Philippines, and we only contribute less than 0.37% carbon dioxide emissions. In 2019, we were the second country with the most number of new internal displacements or climate refugees internally because of extreme weather events, next to India, followed by Bangladesh. So we're really seeing that this isn't just happening in the Philippines, but across the world, to countries in the global south, or as we like to say, most affected peoples and areas. But people from the most affected areas, people who are most vulnerable, are never listened to and given space, especially in climate negotiations like the Conference of Parties. If we look at COP historically, it has been an avenue for world leaders to say nice sounding things and leave it at that. Blah, 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 more empty promises. And these conversations are still controlled by the countries most responsible for the climate crisis. These are the same countries which uphold neoliberal policies in our countries. These are the same countries which is making it so difficult for us to develop, the same countries leading the overexploitation of our lands and calling us poor. That's why a few of us prefer the term MAPA instead of the Global South, because we wanted a term created by us. We wanted to reclaim our story and our narrative. We didn't want a term that called us poor when really, why are we poor? We're not poor. We are so rich in resources, but we are overexploited, again, by the same countries most responsible for the climate crisis. Countries in MAPA are so often left out. I always remember what Ambassador Lumumba, the chair of the G77, said at the Copenhagen climate talks in 2009. He said 2 degrees Celsius, like temperature rising, is certain death for Africa and a type of climate fascism. And we've procrastinated for so long because those who make the decisions in the Conference of Parties aren't those most impacted. They're not the ones who understand the urgency of the climate crisis. They're not the ones who have faced the climate crisis right outside their door, right in front of their face. The voices of the most marginalized and vulnerable, those with the greatest stories of resistance, have not been centered and prioritized. And with talks about COP being postponed or becoming online, having an online COP will only serve to heighten the existing inequalities that is already present in this structure. And it will possibly weaken the voices not just of the MAPA leaders, but also of civil society activists who have always been present as a strong push with the most marginalized sectors of society. And now it seems like a big daunting task because we have the Conference of Parties. Like, we don't want it postponed because we're running out of time, but we also know that if it happens this year with the vaccine inequality happening, again, those most vulnerable, those most marginalized won't be able to have their space in it, and a lot of activists won't be able to go either, and so the push from the people will be missing. And it's such a confusing time right now, and we have to remember that we cannot be disheartened, because the real power isn't in these conferences. The decisions aren't being made in these meeting rooms. The decisions will be made because of the people. The real power is in the streets, with the people, with the movement. And this is why we have to keep fighting. This is why activists from MAPA are asking you to fight with us. Fight with all your heart and your soul, not just for what would be safe for your country and your continent and for your future, but also for our countries and for our present. But remember, remember, do not say that you are fighting for us. Do not say we are voiceless, because we aren't voiceless, we are unheard. Make space for us, fight with us, because we need you. We need everyone to fight for a better future, not just for a few, but for all. So don't let climate change, not system change, just be a chant. Truly embody it in everything you do, in the small, everyday decisions we make, in the way we interact with each other and talk to each other. Be critical and fight against systemic injustices even when, and especially when, it benefits us. And it will be a bumpy road. We are going to get hurt when we have to call out our friends if they're playing into systemic injustices. But remember that when we call each other out, when we point out each other's mistakes, and when we reflect on our own privileges, remember that even if it hurts, and it probably will if you're the one being called out, and even if you're calling someone out, this is so important. Remember that we are not each other's enemy. We all have so much unlearning to do. All this systemic injustice and oppression, it's ingrained in us because this is what society has said is normal. That's why we're not going back to normal after this pandemic, because normal was already a crisis. Normal was horrible and built to be unjust. After this, we want a recovery for a better future, not a better normal. This will be a lifelong journey. This unlearning of the systemic injustice and oppression which has become so normalized to us. And we will never be the perfect activist. No one will ever be the perfect activist. We have to remember that, and that's okay, because we're not doing this alone. We're doing this together. We don't need one perfect activist. We need millions of imperfect activists who make mistakes every day, but are willing to learn from these mistakes and are willing to help each other learn. And we have to be there for each other when this happens, because being critical of one another and ourselves is important in order to grow and be a better, stronger, more inclusive, more intersectional, and more united movement. This is how we do this, so we can keep campaigning together for climate justice. We have to resist as one planet because we have a better world to win.
Thank you, Mitzi. That was kind of moving for me. Yeah, I have to recover from this very intense speech. We have next another MAPA activist from a very heat area from the climate crisis. He's called Yusuf. Yusuf, you have the floor. Are you ready? Okay, just a second. Okay. You can speak.
Hello everyone. This is Yusuf Baloch from Balochistan, a land which has been forgotten years ago. I live with the front lines of climate crisis, and I know how it feels to be displaced. And I know how it feels to lose your people, to lose your homes, because I have been through these situations from years ago. I know how to live with these situations, but these aren't only my problems, because these are the problems of every generation in this world. And these are going to be the problems of every region in the world. And we aren't ready for these situations because we are not dealing the crisis as a crisis. We are not taking it seriously because we think that is not what we think. This is going to be not normal at all. As Mitzi said, we are going to be normalized. We are going to be going normal after the COVID situation. This is just we are thinking. This is not something we are going normal, because we are living with the crisis decades ago. Not now, but decades ago, and we will be living with this crisis. And this is not something to take it as a gift, because this is an issue of everyone. This is an issue of every future generations, and this is an issue of everyone now, in this present era. I live in a region which gets flooded every year, and we have to deal with it. We have to face it, because this is what we have to. People think this is just something normal here, normal at all, because we have to lose our everything. We have to sacrifice our everything to face these situations, and we are not always ready to face these. We are losing our people. People are losing their homes. People are being displaced. We are war affected. We are affected by droughts and extreme weathers. Shops, homes, and forests catch fire because of extreme weather. Sometimes even weather hits more than 50 degrees Celsius. And this is not something normal. Do you think this is something which should be taken not seriously? This is something which should be taken seriously, and you have to get ready for it, because we are sacrificing our everything. You have to listen to us, because we are risking our lives to fight climate injustice. We want a safe future. We don't want to live with this crisis. You still want us to suffer some more decades just because we are not privileged, just because you think you are privileged and you can save your lives. You can, because this is going to be the issue of everyone, every generation in the future, and you are not going to deal with it. This is a global issue. You are not going to solve these issues alone. You have to fight with us. You have to take our hands, and you have to save us and take out us from these issues and these situations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yusuf, for this. Just a second again. Okay. Thank you, Yusuf, for this very inspiring speech. We are grateful to be able to hear, and we hope we can really make sure that you're not unheard anymore. So let's go on with other activists from MAPA. In this case, we have Lorena from Fridays for Future Brazil, who is going to tell us something about the situation there and what we can do to help in our road to the COP. Here's to you, Lorena.
Yes, thank you. My name is Lorena Luiza. I'm an environmental and social activist from Brazil. And I have to say that Brazilian people are tired. We are tired of all the lies that are told us. We are tired of seeing our biomas dying each year by fire and deforestation. Deforestation in Brazil has surged nearly 50% in 2 years and has reached its highest level since 2008. The budget for enforcement was cut by 27.4% this year, which shows that they don't care about what we are screaming, what we are fighting for. I grew up watching movies about Amazon, listening to its stories and its indigenous people, but now I'm afraid of having to tell these stories as a fairy tale to the next Brazilian young generation. The Amazon rainforest is known as one of the most beautiful forests in the world, producing roughly 6% of the world's oxygen, what makes it extremely vital not only for Brazil but for the world's climate. Unfortunately, Brazil is the country that kills most activists fighting for lands and for environment. And they don't care about it. They are caring only about profits. How can they live knowing that their profits are dirty with our blood? We are demanding actions, and they make fun of us giving excuses or even punish us, saying that we are culpable about their fires and their forest. They are making money, making profits with our forest, devastating it, and it's dying each year. We can't live with it. We are dying, and we are fighting for it, and they just leave us talking alone. If our forests die, how will they make profits with it? Because they won't have it anymore. How can they care about their children, even though they are killing us? They don't care. Our Amazon is asking help, so do we. We can't wait anymore because the future is now. We can't wait, and we are trying. We don't have representative in COP anymore. Like we have our government as representative in COP, but we need young people to talk there, and we don't have it. We need young people to have the words listen to us, but they don't have it. We need to fight every day for it, and aren't listening to us. I ask the words to listen to us and to help us because we are trying, but we can't do anymore because they are pressing us, and we can't fight for it alone anymore. And that's all I needed to talk. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. So we will have another speech for Brazil maybe later, they're telling me. But as for now, we are really thankful for Lorena's intervention and for telling us how it's going there and what you need. And we will surely keep it into account while we're beating our way to the COP. Now we're going to have a contribution from Fridays for Future Ukraine, from Victoria and Ilyes. Are you there, guys? Hi, just a second. I'll tell you when to start. And it's you. Please start. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ilyes. I am a climate justice activist from Ukraine. I spent my childhood and adolescence in my father's country in Morocco, Northern Africa. I have seen consequences of climate crisis. When I moved with my mother back to Ukraine, I realized that people can suffer from climate crisis regardless of the place. Today I want to tell you about the post-Soviet region of Eastern Europe, Caucasus, Central Asia, and my country Ukraine. 60% of the people live below the global poverty line here. 2.8 million of people are with disabilities partly due to ecology, and 1.7 million of displaced people because of the Russian war. This is only what the United Nations say about Ukraine as part of the post-Soviet region. Back in 2008, Georgian people lost their territories because of Russia. Today, Russia is pulling its troops to the borders of Ukraine once again. Right now, Russia is present in war between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Syrian people suffer in the east of Ukraine. Russia, 30 years since the Soviet Union collapse, still maintains its imperialist regime by consuming fossil fuels and exploiting other nations. Soviet Union historical greenhouse emissions are 16% of all over the world, while international companies and banks are still exploiting countries until today by investing in our crisis. People in countries like Russia can't go on strikes and say no. In our region, youth are afraid to demand the future which belongs to us truly. Therefore, only our international solidarity can stop this. In most of our regions, countries' regimes are not democratic. Economies are below global average. People don't have access to justice. Women, girls, and children are exposed to domestic violence. Wealth and resources are badly distributed because of corruption. People in Mapa can't be confident in their better future. The only activism we do is not highlighted in the world. Back at COP25, I realized that very few people know about the problems of my country or our post-Soviet territory. I was shocked that we are perceived as Europe, and we on the level of some global north. In fact, we are among the most affected people in areas which others. An Italian poet, Dante Alighieri, once said, "The hottest places in hell are reserved for those who in a period of moral crisis maintain their neutrality." Our leaders behave irresponsibly, and we are all those to whom the hell of the climate crisis is reserved, if we don't act right now. Our leaders are silent, but when a crisis is happening, we can't be silent. And if leaders don't want to do this, we as the people have to. In my view, the People's International Summit is one of the keys, and this is why it's important to be right here and present for each other. They say every person in the world is important, but are silent about our problems. For years of empty conferences, they use order, security, and neutrality to keep us people in silence, to build their authoritarian and despotic regimes. The principles they promise us with empty words, while they take away our future and now make people suffer from the climate crisis. This is why we should unite as people. Whatever the place, no one can silence the people. We are here, and we are the people who will unite our voices together for climate justice. Thank you. May I pass my word to Victoria?
Hello. So my name is Victoria, and I am a student in the United Kingdom, where climate issues are something that largely society is mostly aware of. And I first experienced what it is like to be part of a climate movement as part of Extincion Rebellion, which is a massive force often covered by the media. But I am also Ukrainian, and Ukraine is in its 30th year of independence from the Soviet Union. It strives to join the EU, but our environmental, our human rights, and our social standards are far behind. From the UK, I see that ambitious climate action is possible, but instead I'm constantly frustrated about the inaction of those in power back in my home country. They draft speeches and plans, but what I don't see are actions. Year after year, I am disappointed with the climate ignorance I see in Ukraine because state-owned media does not consider climate issues as important. You may ask, why should I care as someone living so far away from those truly affected? Because already people are suffering from climate ignorance. People in Ukraine, although they are in the global north, just like MAPA countries, the most affected people and areas, are silenced by the ignorant with threats to their homes, to their livelihood, and to their families. International corporations see Ukraine as a land from which they can profit, and this has been the story of Ukraine as well as so many other countries in our region for centuries. In recent years, for example, an agricultural company financed by the European Investment Bank has been polluting the land in our Kherson region of Ukraine. It has been privatizing the land that belongs to ordinary people, forcing one disabled activist to seek moving out of her own home and reaching out for us to fight against this injustice. Elsewhere, one of our activists from Fridays for Future Ukraine in the Dnipropetrovsk region has been attacked, and she was sent threats online just for doing peaceful protests. My colleague Ilyes, who's just spoken now, has experienced this already in 2019 as well. And last year, there have been at least 74 attacks on activists in my country, and this is unacceptable. And still, so much of the international community does not acknowledge these truths and struggles. So I am here today as a UK activist from Fridays for Future Ukraine, because in my short time of working together with MAPA, the most affected people and areas, I have learnt so much from them, including from activists in Ukraine. And this is why today I pledge to amplify the strong voices of MAPA, and I urge everyone here to join us. Reach out to the most affected activists and listen to them. Flood the media with their stories and what they have achieved. Together, we must learn that those on the front line of the fight for the climate, and because only with global awareness and collaboration can we make sure nobody is left behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Now you can see from our cam that we're doing a live painting, which is directly related to what we're saying and what we're planning to do. So we will show it to you here and there in order to keep you updated on the action we're doing while we build our path toward the pre-COP and the COP of this autumn. As of now, we have a second activist from Fridays for Future Brazil. Her name is Ana Luisa. And if you're there, Ana Luisa, I give you the floor. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Great. Just a second. I'll tell you when to go.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'm from Brazil, and it's important to talk about how our government denied and is still denying the pandemics. Actually, if we stop to think, the pandemic was good for them, for the agriculture sector. In the last year, our environmental minister, Ricardo Salles, told with all the letters that the government should enjoy the pandemics to pass the cattle. In Brazil, passar a boiada. And that means to invade indigenous lands, burn out forests, and stimulate illegal mining. And the result, of course, was terrible. Amazon and Pantanal destroyed. We had the hottest year in our history. Many indigenous living died because of COVID-19, because the contact with white people invading their lands. Also, now, 1 year later, we have 19 million hungry people, and we are tired, frustrated, and desperate. Brazil is a dangerous place for activists, but our fights can't stop, because we we want to have a great and beautiful future. And our situation here is really complicated. We have one more year with a president that doesn't care for his population. He only cares about money. And sadly, it's not just him. The whole government is doing like that. And we have this minister that doesn't care for the environmental. He is totally against all the laws and against our constitution. And we as activists, we are trying so hard to protect our country, you know. We want to our nation to be great, to be good, and for everyone, not only for the rich people, you know. I said in the text that 19 million people are hungry. They don't have nothing to eat, and that's, oh my God, it's something that we just can't imagine. And at the same time, we have just 20 Brazilians that got billionaire during the pandemics.
So we have this big issue, social issue, and we want to still fighting because without social justice we cannot have uh, environmental justice. And I'm here now talking this to you because we have many young people here, and we are all desperate because that it's a situation that doesn't allow us to think about a future, and that's so complicated because we have now kids being born, and we have professions that we want to follow, but we just can't, and that's so terrible and complicated. And this is the situation of Brazil right now. And I'm really grateful for the space that you gave to me and to my friend Lorena, because we need to work together and to fight against injustice, to fight against people who only cares about money, people who doesn't really care about people, about indigenous, about quilombolas, the black people, and that's so complicated. So thank you so much for the space, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a second. And 1, 2, 3. Ça possiamo fare? Okay, thank you. We're back. So now, after these amazing speeches from FFF Brazil and FFF Ukraine, we're supposed to have Selam, which she's translating at the moment because Selam is from Mediterranean, but she also helps here at SMS, Spazio di Mutuo Soccorso, and she does so much to help us that here she is. She was translating. Just 1 second. Okay, I'll leave the floor to Selam.
Thank you so much to Fridays for Future Milan for the opportunity. We're talking about climate change, especially in the so-called MAPA, most affected people and areas. These, as said before, generates epochal migrations. The main responsibilities of these often are from the same actors, governments, for example, European Union, US, who stigmatize those who move from their original country, migrants. A colonial rhetoric that tells a world upside down to continue forever for a global injustice. Mediterranean Saving Human believes that saving the planet means saving the possibility of human lives on Earth. We know that climate change is one of the reasons of the migration flows, and that in the countries that have now European colonialism, they are the first to pay the consequences. While in the global north, we continue to pollute, produce, and live in a capitalistic system that is structured on the axis of gender, class, and race. In short, the environmental crisis and the migratory crisis are closely connected, not only because many forced migration are caused by climate change, but also because these crises all originate from the same system. From that extractivist paradigm on which society is structured. The system exploits nature and people without regard, considering them only in their usefulness for economic production and profit. The system devastates nature, destroys lands, exploits people in an inhuman way, especially those who live in the most exploited part of the world, the so-called South global. Without the possibility of living with dignity, too many people are forced to leave their lands for poverty, for climate change that also cause wars and conflict. In short, for the several consequences of the same system. And since this extractivist and neocolonial system does not fall, human dignity and the fundamental human attitude to move in the world won't be possible, because migration is a human act. While goods can be moved with great ease, these people, considered as waste or free labor, cannot migrate safely and are forced to undertake very dangerous routes, such as in the Mediterranean Sea, in the Balkan, to reach Turkey or in the United States, in which they do not survive, encountering wars, concentration camp, rejection, exploitation. We believe rape for women, but not only. We believe that the connection between the struggles for the environment and those for human rights is fundamental, because we fight against the same system. At the same time, the European government decided to unleash an offensive action to criminalize those who practice rescue at sea, also because they don't want anybody to witness what is happening. And Mediterranean, as other NGO that are now working in the Mediterranean Sea, are facing a very strong action against them from the European Union. We only say that Mediterranean also follow whoever saves one life saves the whole world. So we know that saving the planet is saving humans. Thank you.
Thank you, Selam. Just to explain it once again, Mediterranean is one NGO who does rescue in the Mediterranean Sea, and they do a very powerful and important job. They have been blocked and criminalized by our government some time ago, and we still stand with them because they keep doing what our government fails to do. So just follow them and let's see how they help us next. And after this, we will have a guest from Fridays for Future Madrid. Since last COP25 was in Madrid, the Fridays for Future group organized just a platform as ours called the Cumbre Social de Madrid. So we have Alejandro that will tell us something more about it and what FFF Madrid expect for the pre-COP and COP. Are you there, Alejandro?
Yeah, hi, hello.
Just a second. Okay, there you go.
Okay, so for us was a bit crazy because, as you know, like COP changed from Chile to Madrid, and normally you have like a lot of time to prepare these kind of things, like for the demonstration, the social summit, and everything else that came with something as a COP. But we have to make it everything really fast and also respect the work that was already done in Chile, because we didn't want to just do something like completely different to what the people there had been preparing for months and even years. So basically, during COP, there is like two spaces for the people, for the civil society. That is the demonstration and the social summit. That's, as you all know, is like the space of interaction where we can learn from each other. I think last COP was really significant and important because it came as the last thing of a year of climate revolution all over the world. And it's when we were saying all over the year to the politicians what we were expecting for them. A lot of them say that they agree with us, and COP was the opportunity for them to prove, not only with word, but with action. And we didn't show that. So I think it's really important for us to go further because we are running out of time. And what I think it's really that it could be really useful for this social summit during the pre-COP is that we can really create a space where we can share how we can like lobby the governments, because at the time of COP the governments came to the summit with their own position just to defend it, where we can influence more in what is going to happen at COP is before COP. And I think just the time between the pre-COP and COP could be like, or more possible time to influence what is going to happen.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you, Alejandro, for your witness from last year. We hope that we can create a meaningful connection from last year to this year's COPs. Not last year, 2 years ago. Oh God, like it's as if the COVID year was like a jump, like a complete stop in our lives, but we were still there, and many people were still suffering. So that's why we have to remember we have to come together, right? And we have to listen to each other after all this had happened. So now we will have a guest from the Glasgow Agreement Group. Her name is Alice. Alice, are you there?
Yeah, hello.
Hi, just a second, we'll put you through. And please make sure that if you want us to, like, okay, that's okay. You're there.
Is everything okay? Can I start?
Yes, thank you. Sorry for the delay.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Hi, so my name is Alice. I am currently working on the Glasgow Agreement, but I am from FFF Portugal and Climacium. And yeah, so maybe I'll start by telling you a little bit about why did the Glasgow Agreement emerged and how. So we knew one basic fact: our house was on fire. And 25 years of COPs, signing papers, statements by local and international actors has resulted in lighting the flames, creating an illusion of addressing it while real action was being avoided, keeping the business as usual of destruction of the planet and lives. The climate justice movement has the potential to change the system, and we saw that strength at the counter COP in Madrid. But to fight the fire, we need new strategical tools of action. And on November of 2020, we signed the Glasgow Agreement, and we are now more than 150 organizations from more than 50 territories from all continents. And yeah, COP26 will be different, but not because of the pressure we'll put on it, and yes, because we'll have our own plan. So yeah, maybe I'll tell you a little bit about what is the Glasgow Agreement. So the Glasgow Agreement focus is to create a real international plan for action able of keeping us below 1.5 warming by 2100, cutting 50% of global greenhouse gas emissions through a framework of climate justice, which we agreed upon collectively after some months of work. And this climate justice definition recognizes the interdependence of all species, the recovery of indigenous knowledge, the integration of the care economy into the center of climate justice, the refusal of green capitalism, that the economy must be democratically planned based on real needs, the food sovereignty is a people's rights, the need to replace oppression, imposition, and appropriation for cooperation, solidarity, and mutual aid, the need for an ecological and historical debt reparation and to stop its origins, and to redress centuries of racism, colonialism, and imperialism. But finally, last but not least, our climate justice definition recognizes that we need a just transition for workers and local communities. So the organizations in the Glasgow Agreement assume the need to collectively cut their greenhouse gas emissions, and for this we'll use, although not only, the tactic of civil disobedience. So we are no longer asking institutions and COPs to do these cuts for us. We are recognizing that we have the power and the need to do so because institutions are failing and they have been meant to fail. So how will we do this? Because it seems like a really hard task. So first of all, we have the inventories. So the organizations that signed the Glasgow Agreement commit to the production of an inventory of disaggregated emissions, organizing the information not by abstract sectors, as it is right now, but by mapping concrete infrastructures, companies, and future projects responsible for the emission of greenhouse gas in their territories. The inventory is like an X-ray, or if you like, a map of fire of the territory that help us to understand better our reality, know exactly who and what is responsible for the fire in our house. Where are the big polluters? Who is financing them? What is the emission cost of a project? What is the cost of future projects? And setting the basis to act collectively at a local and international level to target them. An innovation about the Glasgow Agreement is that we don't focus only on keeping fossil fuels on the ground, which we absolutely have to, but we also focus to put an end on this, but we also focus to tackle the places where those fossil fuels are being transformed, refined, or produced. And yeah, based on the territorial inventories and on our climate justice framework, groups will also go to the next step, which is the climate justice agenda. So groups will work in collaboration to build the climate justice agenda with each other, and if they wish, as well with other groups of the social movement, since climate justice is social and racial justice, and that a real climate justice plan can leave no one behind. So we'll do this to build the social plan that we need to fight the fire. And based on this plan, we intend to act to shut down the main projects, infrastructures, but we also intend to start to plan with groups, unions, etc., the transition part, for instance, climate jobs. Besides the local plans, we also plan to create regional and international climate agendas. And we also recognize that we are all learning in this process, which will continuously be adapted to fight the fire and rebuild our house as effectively as possible. We will continuously strive to increase our knowledge and collective capacities, and we will grow during this process. And we hope that the climate justice movement also grows during this process. So just to give you a real brief overview about what is happening right now and what are the future concrete steps. We are currently finishing the first inventories. Some countries are already done, others are in progress, and some territories are starting to shape their climate justice agendas. We are also on the continued process of building regional spaces for coordination and articulation. For instance, Latin America, Asian, African, and Europe. All of this is still being an ongoing process. And we are planning a global online conference in June or July. And there, in that global online conference, we will start to plan coordinated action moments. And yeah, I think this is the overview about what is the Glasgow Agreement. Thank you so much. And maybe I will pass directly to Matilde for her to talk about FFF Portugal and Glasgow Agreement.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so Matilde, I guess you can.
Can you hear me well? Okay. So hi everyone, I am Matilde and I'm from Fridays for Future Portugal. Picking up a bit where Alice left, in my speech I'll talk a little bit about Fridays for Future Portugal's visions and strategies within the framework of the Glasgow Agreement. We are currently involved in other campaigns as well, but I will focus on our participation in the Glasgow Agreement. So we signed the Glasgow Agreement in last October 2020 with over 80 organizations from around the world. Having organized, as many of you, several strikes on Fridays, we sort of realized that the strategy was sort of missing. And strike after strike, we started feeling a little bit lost on what to do next. We realized that we needed a long-term plan with very concrete and specific targets with strong national and international coordination. And that is why we signed the Glasgow Agreement back in October. One thing that initially came to our minds as a challenge was the commitment for organizations of the Glasgow Agreement to practice civil disobedience. We have never organized a civil disobedience action before, and besides that, usually it's not the usual image that Fridays for Future transmits to the movement as a whole. So this got us thinking, how can we use our incredible, massive mobilizing power as Fridays for Future to build and participate in the Glasgow Agreement, building long-term strategy and strong international coordination? Well, first of all, we got involved in Glasgow Agreement at the national level. So teaming up with Climáximo, the other Portuguese organization that signed the Glasgow Agreement, we built our national inventory and presented it back in March. Now, we are currently building the climate justice agenda space for Portugal, together with other groups that fight for social justice, such as housing, feminism, and anti-racism. Then, at the international level, some FFF's groups were joining the agreement. Currently, we have 17 Fridays for Future groups from 17 different countries and all continents, except Oceania. And this is incredible. As Fridays for Future groups, many of us feel the same struggle towards trying to find strategy that can guide us through many more years of needed, powerful mass mobilizations as we can do. And we feel like Fridays for Future in the Glasgow Agreement will mean powerfully articulated mass mobilizations around our climate justice agendas. So, having built our national ones with different groups that fight for social justice and local communities, we can then look at them and understand what are the targets that we internationally have in common, so companies, banks, etc. We can articulate and join forces to build very focused and concrete regional international climate agendas, having our main targets well defined within the framework of climate justice. We think that we, as Fridays for Future, have so much potential to build this Glasgow Agreement by articulating our climate agendas regionally and internationally, and having their main targets as themes and reivindications on our future global actions. I just want to conclude by saying that Fridays for Future is a very important part of the climate justice movement, and we think that we need to be on board for the next step of our movement and help building it with our strong articulation and mobilization capacity, coordinating ourselves even better with other national and international groups that fight towards the same goal of system change. And I think I am done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mathilde. Now we have a contribution from Glasgow Calls Out Polluters. Erin, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, great. Just a second, I'll put you through. Okay, there you go.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Erin and I'm here today on behalf of Glasgow Calls Out Polluters, also known as GCOP, which is an activist group from Glasgow. We're very grateful to be here and to hear so many different experiences and so many different collectives coming together for the same cause. So in spite of the circumstances, our last year has been quite eventful and we've been preparing and trying our best to give a contribution as a collective to the climate and moral crisis we're facing. As you may all know, at the moment, the next COP meeting will be held in Glasgow, which is our home city, and so we've been very busy on our own grounds. So our campaign is mainly concerned with the role of big polluters in the COP meetings. So how these big energy companies such as oil and gas contribute to the climate crisis through their greed and morally appalling behaviour by infiltrating themselves into the climate negotiations. So I'll start with a bit of history on our group specifically. So we started, in Glasgow in 2014, there was a group of university students who achieved something incredible. They pushed the university to begin from divesting from fossil fuels, and this was the first campaign in Europe to be successful in terms of fossil fuel divestment. So this increasingly raised awareness in the whole city, and the campaign started spreading out. And smaller groups and collectives and a bigger network of our activists came together and started being more aware of the issue. In 2019, as the COP meeting, the 26th COP, was announced in our city, in the city of Glasgow, we decided to, different members from different groups came together and joined forces and formed Glasgow Calls Out Polluters, continuing to fight to kick big polluters out of our institutions. So out of the government conferences, out of the climate negotiations and all the rest of it. So in the last year, our climate activism has had to move on to different platforms, let's say. So we had to go digital, but we have been working hard nonetheless to deliver on different fronts, like our presence, and make sure that it is felt in the face of these UN climate debates. So we have done so by starting a Polluters Watch page, where we gather information about different polluters and different companies that are becoming involved throughout the years, as it has happened in different COPs in the past. And we create somehow a report of what these organizations are doing and how they are investing, how they're greenwashing government institutions, and how they're having their say in some sense. So how they're venturing into the realm of politics where they shouldn't be. As well as this, just a few weeks ago, we launched an open letter to Alok Sharma, who is the president of COP26. And in this letter, we asked to kick out polluters as a definite solution to find a better way to face the climate crisis as a whole. So in this initiative, we have been supported by many environmental activism groups throughout the world, and we have gathered around 180 signatories from different groups, different social organizations, different communities who have been shown solidarity with our cause and to whom we are very, very grateful. Through this letter, we wish to directly express our discontent towards the compliant and immoral attitude that the government has shown towards these companies, towards just an immoral behaviour towards what is a climate crisis that involves us all and doesn't seem to be trying to find a solution to this. So we're constantly looking to engage and link up with different groups. So anyone who feels like they should like come towards us, they are very welcome to sign our letter and show some solidarity, which we believe is crucial in this moment, where different groups from, as we have seen today, like different experiences from the whole world, where climate becomes an issue that is experienced even in different ways according to the different geographies, but it will one day involve us all, as it's the same earth we're living on. So we believe that solidarity is the link that is already bringing us together in this moment. So we're aware that this kick polluter out fight has been happening throughout the COPs, throughout the years, and we'll be continuing to pressure and organise and escalate our pressure beyond what we've done so far. We're aware that this fight might have not affected our daily lives yet, but it's a fight we must fight together and we hold close to heart, especially now that the climate negotiations are coming to our home city. To conclude, Glasgow has for a long time been an important city for the development of sustainable ideas and plans, and as we have seen, like with the history of our group, for instance, it has been a place where the youth has had a say in this. So students and young people have been able to express their discontent and their concerns. So we strongly believe this is a crucial time to present ourselves as faithful to these values. Thank you very much for having us, and I will link our contact details.
Thank you again, Erin. So, after these amazing speeches, we now have a witness from ActionAid. It's Corinne. Can you hear me, Corinne?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Just a second and we put you through.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And just
okay.
A second. There you go.
Thank you very much for inviting us here today. This is Corinne from ActionAid Italy. I'm youth focal point at ActionAid Italy, and ActionAid is a global federation present in over 40 countries across the world, with our global secretariat in Johannesburg, South Africa. All over the world, we work closely with people living in poverty and exclusion, civil society organizations, activists, movements, to bring change at local, national and global level on issues connected with gender justice, economic and tax justice and climate justice. Here in Italy, our main areas of work are rights, where we focus mainly on the right to citizenship and also the right to live free from gender-based violence. And on redistribution, by which we mean the redistribution of national wealth, but also the fight to global inequalities. And we do this through a participatory approach by stimulating citizen participation and their active engagement in all the issues affecting them. Currently at ActionAid, we are very aware and we acknowledge that existing economic systems are dramatically failing both the people and the planet. The intersecting crisis, by which we mean, for example, the climate crisis, but also the financial and economic crisis, the democratic crisis we are facing in many countries, are highly exacerbated by the current pandemic and by COVID. All this makes it very urgent to find radical alternatives and a feminist approach to economic and climate-related policies and decision-making. We want to do this by putting women and youth at the center. For the next years, ActionAid will put forward a feminist, just and green future agenda, which is all about the recognition of society, the reorganization of society, economy and politics with care at the center. Thanks to this care economy, women's paid and unpaid care work will be revalued, but also the organization of work across countries, genders, and generations will be organized in a more fair and equal way. The care economy will provide decent and green jobs for all, especially in this digital era. And by care, we also mean the care for the environment and the ecosystems. Care economy can be an exit out of fossil fuel dependency, high emission, extractive economy, humanitarian and food crises, which are caused also by climate change. It requires profound transformations in our food, energy, and economic systems that to radically cut greenhouse emissions, ensure food sovereignty and energy access, and resilient livelihoods for all. Care economy will also transform international governments' rules, systems, and institutions, recognizing and rebalancing the historical and ongoing unequal power relations between the global north and the global south. Recognizing also the responsibility of the global north for causing the climate crisis. Thanks to care economy, we also want to achieve an investment in global south green transition through international progressive and green tax systems, and by balancing global supply and value chain. A care economy will also strengthen the state to protect not only its citizens, but also migrants, refugees, and all those internally displaced people, for example, those by the climate crises we are facing. A feminist, just and green transition will ensure that young people, and especially young women, who are paying the price and the consequences of the crisis will have a better future. This is why we as ActionAid will put young women, by which I mean all those who recognize as women and not only those who are biologically born as such, and young people at the forefront of this transition. We will be committed to shifting power by taking a feminist, intersectional, decolonial, racial justice approach, driven by the active agency of youth and women, and by addressing the intersecting inequalities based on race, gender, age, disability, ethnicity, class, sexual orientation, and gender identities. ActionAid has also a global youth community, which is composed of youth practitioners, activists, and civil society organizations and youth organizations from all over the world. And we also will be active during Youth COP by trying to front feminist and global South solutions and solidarity. Our main points will be to resisting false climate solutions, such as, for example, net zero, and advancing just transitions, feminist, ecological, and economic alternatives for climate justice. We think that climate finance should be used not only for mitigation and adaptation, but also for loss and damage caused by the global north. We need to recognize the historic and intergenerational responsibility for the climate crisis. Since young Black and brown women and LGBT people from the global south are those who are bear the burden of the crisis we are facing, yet they are the least responsible. We will build cross-movement, intergenerational and international solidarity, which is critical to advance green, just and a feminist future. Indeed, young people from the global north can do a lot to support youth in the global south. For example, by holding governments accountable for pollution and for the economical damage they are causing. This is also what we will be during Youth COP and before Youth COP as ActionAid Italy. We will try to push and make young people's voice from all over the world, and we hope that we can do it all together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Corinne. Now we have our own Lavinia from Fridays for Future Italy, and she's gonna bring like the national view on what is going on, what is going to mean to have the pre-COP here, and what we're going to do and try to do at the COP. Lavi, ci sei? Mi senti?
Ci sono.
Okay, there you go. Just a second.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. And actually, I have to tell you, I'm coming here feeling a bit guilty. As representative of Italy, we are going to be, as you know, hosting Youth COP, pre-COP. We're going to be organizing COP26, a lot of things. There is a big responsibility on us, a lot of expectations. And unfortunately, we do think these expectations haven't been met yet. But this is going to be the year of revolution. This is going to be the year of ambition. That's actually what we always tell ourselves. What we told ourselves during COP25, COP24, COP23. We've always been telling ourselves that this year is going to be the year of ambition. But yet, to this day, this hasn't led to anything concrete. Especially in Italy, we have always this tendency of telling ourselves that we're doing enough, that we're doing a lot, when we actually haven't been doing even one step towards anything useful. The thing that usually happens is not that we don't want to see things that we need to do. It's not that we don't recognize the importance of the climate crisis, or that we don't recognize that we have to do something, because we know we have to do a shift. It's pretty clear to everyone. And because of this, we have been so good to putting all these things on paper, in words. We've been really, really good at saying that this is going to be the year that things will change. But the problem occurs when things need to be turned into action. And not because we don't know what to do. It is actually because when things need to get done, everyone just seems to be getting so tired and just cannot keep up with one task. We have a problem with commitment. We always did. And this is really, really dangerous, and it is kind of threatening when we talk about the climate crisis, because we know that the climate crisis has a deadline. We know that the climate crisis, that we have just a bit less than 7 years to change almost everything that is around us. And obviously we do not have time to just push our political leaders into acting and to tell them, you have the strength to do this, it's not that hard, it's not that much of a thing. And this is really, it's a problem that we have met up until this point into politics in Italy, but especially talking about COP26 and everything leading up to it. So we need to recognize as activists that this is the real problem, that they know what they need to do. But there is a problem in doing it because it almost feels like too much to handle. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I think it's quite common for people in a country like Italy that seems so powerful economically, socially, but then you get into its politics and in its political scene and you feel like everything is going wrong. The thing that happens is that you feel that everything is on your shoulders and that you cannot do anything to solve this because it feels so much of a deal. The climate crisis is really a problem that is bigger than us. And it's obviously natural that we almost feel like we'd rather just not do anything because it feels too much. But we're not allowed to let this thing happen. And we're not allowed to do this because there is not only our lives on stake, it is kind of the human race on stake. We've heard the Professor Luca Mercalli speak as first. He told us a lot of really not quite good things, and most of them were that the route that we're on is not the route that we need to be on. And this should be the key point of COP26. COP26 should be about, we're not doing what we need to do, we just have to tell ourselves, and we need to do something. Even the last time that we remember doing something, which was back in 2015 with the Paris Agreement, it was non-binding. No one cared about it because they made it non-binding. They knew that this wasn't going to change anything, but we'd rather do it like this. So I think, and actually activists from all Italy that have seen this happen quite too many times, is that we need to recognize that the problem is we are tired, that we look tired, but that we cannot allow ourselves to be tired anymore. That we need to push through, that we need to change things,
not because it's just beneficial for the climate, but because it is beneficial for everyone under each and every aspect. We've been missing the point up until this point. Politics has been missing the point, because the point is the climate crisis is a 360-degree crisis. It is a crisis that's going to bring us to extinction, but it's also the crisis that's behind each and every crisis that human people are facing. So we have to get this point straight through, and we also need to get the point that we are here, we are fighting, we are making ourselves listen. We are not letting tiredness just bring us to extinction, because it is not right. It's not right for people living in map areas, but it's not even right for us, because people are already dying also in the countries that are not part of mappers. And yeah, this is basically what COP26 needs to be about, what pre-COP needs to be about, what each and every word of activism should be about from now until November 2021, because we cannot allow ourselves to lose more time. Thank you.
Thank you, Lavinia. Now we're going to have Priorità alla Scuola. And the people representing Priorità alla Scuola, that means priority to school, should be here in a moment. Okay? So the floor is to pass Priorità alla Scuola.
Am I... Okay.
Sì. Ok, puoi parlare.
It's my turn?
Yes.
Okay. So, first of all, I want to thank you all for this inspiring conversation and for inviting me to represent Priorità alla Scuola, an Italian movement, thus for giving some room, some space to talk about the struggles which have raised in Italy around schools and the right to education during last year. So what happened in Italy during the pandemic? Well, it happened that millions of teens went to school for no more than 3 weeks in a year. Instead, kids up to 12 years old, more or less, turn back to school in fits and starts, and not all over the country. This means that depending on where you live, you have access or not to the right to education according to regional governors, and this is a situation with few precedents in Italy. I don't want to spend time here to say how many days of schools Italian kids have lost compared with European ones. I just want to underline how, for this very reason, they have experienced an increase in achievement gaps by income, by place of origin, and by family condition. This is the current situation. Nevertheless, exactly as the pandemic is not an event per se, rather the consequence of decades of abuse of earth, resource, other species, and human life and labor, in the same way the ease with which the right to education was violated in Italy is in fact the consequence of decades of structural disinvestment on education. Plus is the consequence of the fact that the Italian welfare relies upon family, meaning grandpas, grandmas, women, and of course mothers, covering decades of side effects on, let's say, welfare cuts. This is why schools have been considered expendable for the Italian government. Instead, we, the movement called Priorità alla Scuola, are very much convinced that schools are not expendable at all, no? Priorità alla Scuola is a movement constituted by parents, students, teachers, parents, school staff, unions, activists coming from other movements too, and people in general that are asking from its same name, Priorità alla Scuola, which translated is priority to schools, to put school first.
And let's ask about first of what, no? And we think that keeping school open or transferring them behind a monitor, it is mostly an economic choice. During a pandemic, we know how much it is important to close entire sector of population in order to contain the spread of the virus. However, we also know how many activities, how many non-essential productive sectors should have been shut down and their workers economically sustained to prioritize an essential sector as school is. And we also know how complex and radical has been during last year the very request by Priorità alla Scuola, which was to collectively reflect around what is essential and for whom for a livable life. Indeed, we think that to democratically decide to shut down productive activities such as factories that are not essential during a pandemic, it is to say and to democratically decide these are probably not essential tomorrow neither. Let's put it simply, to put schools first call, from our perspective, for a deep and structural reflection on future scenarios. And as Simon Mayer recently stated, we need a system capable of scaling back production, remembering how economy is at its very core the way we take and restore our resources and turn them into the thing we need to live. So the here and now question is what it is required to live a good life nowadays. This same question has been, let's say, the starting point from which a movement of people start struggling on schools around two main directions. One is related to the present situation, of course, meaning the material condition in which Italian schools have been reduced in last decades, and the other one is related to a political concern and an opportunity, meaning the urgency to think at the pandemic as a portal and as an opportunity for which to change and foster the public system by giving a new centrality to the school institution itself. We think, in fact, that, let's say, public schools are better able to, than markets, for instance, to promote and reproduce sustainable consumption and to coordinate common sustainable practices. So to struggle for this public system to be open and accessible in any condition and to be strengthened is for our movement a key point. Without school, there is no future. Moreover, we really need schools to become models for a new idea of future, to become spaces from where to show to others the ways, the methods with which to think about the present condition of possibility for a livable world. For this to become, let's say, a reality, we have four general points. First one, schools must always be open in any condition, even more now than we are entering a pandemic phase of which we don't know exactly the borders until we radically change our attitude as humans on Earth. Second, school must be greatly founded to be safe in any condition and to be strengthened. We don't want the industry to be the main subject of all European refounding politics after the pandemic, unless money is truly spent for reducing emissions of those same industry. However, we are skeptical this will happen without a strong cultural turn, and this is the reason why schools are important. Free. School must be the place for both a more democratic time for students to reorganize their political and scientific priorities, and together for an education, let's say a portfolio which is able to include contemporary issues around power, health, research, labor, racism, and patriarchy. In a word, all issues related and connected to the climate justice. Last, schools building must be made energy efficient, safe, and ecosystemic with the surrounding territory, with their local neighborhood. So we really hope you all agree with, let's say, these starting points, and that we can together add many other points at the top of them. We really hope that we all agree with the fact that without schools, there's no future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your speech. And now we give the floor to another Italian organization. I mean, it's not Italian, but... Okay. We have another part of Priorità alla Scuola. Yes, they're telling me that Priorità alla Scuola isn't finished. And they have another little speech to give us from the student perspective. As you can see, there is a live painting action taking place here. We have a painting that is going to portray more or less the message we want to bring. And you will see the final result at the end of this assembly. Okay.
Hello to everybody, I'm Loris, and I'm an Italian student. All of us, we're conscious about how the climate change are strongly connected and profoundly to our society, and it puts ahead life and well-being of people instead of profits. Clearly, the issue is the society we're living in, a system which is going the opposite direction of what we need. In order to change our society, we need to make it in a more sustainable way. A key concept to this is school, as it's a place where we're going to form the future generations and future citizens. Consequently, school has to be a place of share, a platform where we can transform and modify the current society. Our school has to be, instead of being just a play of what society is and a projection of the issues it brings, It has to be able to modify and evolve the issues that are ongoing in our society in order to make our society more sustainable. Surely, an element has to be the school reforms must change, as they have been so frontal and direct since the last 100 years. This makes it old and inefficient to change student minds and make a critical citizen. Ecological topics and environmental ideas must be priority in the future generation school programs in order to transmit the importance and the relevance of this in our future lives and society, to have a citizenship who is more involved and active towards these topics. These themes cannot be ignored and are the most important ones, as the future generations are going to be formed in these schools. None of the current reforms have gone that way. These topics have to be started as soon as possible in order to give responsibility to students and give them the right tools in order to be aware and able to actually react in order to change these issues. But schools and pedagogies have to be shaped in order to make the students aware of the fact that humans are shaping and their actions have responsibilities towards the climate actions. While talking about health, we cannot ignore the difference and the importance between and the connection between health, mental health and physical health. This is strongly linked with environmental safety. In this global pandemic, these issues have risen even stronger than before. This mostly due to the fact that classes were thought as being chicken houses. The idea of having 20 students in each place doesn't allow them to have the independence of movements. As Priorità alla Scuola group sustains, we are building and we are proposing a different model, as it starts from the lower, from teachers, from students, all of the people involved in schools, for those who live school daily, and they have all the rights to express how the school in the future should be. Thank you.
Talking about climate justice in Italy, we need to face the reality that the society we live in is one of the major responsible of the climate crisis we are facing and of the exploitation of resources and peoples in the countries most affected and vulnerable to climate change. It is not an easy realization, but we need to make it, for just in this way, deconstructing through critical thought the production and consumption models that are imposed on us and that we impose on the rest of the world, we can really act in the struggle for climate justice. We need to take responsibility for the cost that the advantages and privileges that we have on other people and territories in the rest of the world. This awareness is fundamental to intervene through the public education system. Schools need to teach students a sustainability that starts from the protection of rights and people. In the Western countries of the global North, it have always been young people and students to fight for climate justice, following the example of activists and movements from the MAPA region. we students of the Coordinamento dei Collettivi Studenteschi started taking action, trying to build a path towards the pre-COP summits in September. But in the meantime, we are taking action, trying to defend our right to education that during the pandemics has always been left behind. We want to go back into our schools that need to become a place where before notions, critical thought, and the values of global solidarity and climate justice are taught. We need those values to be the ones that lead us going forward in the ecological transition and in the building of our own future. This has to be the way that the fight for climate justice in Italy and in the global north goes. The fact that all around the world have been young people and students, activists to animate Fridays for Futures and other movements for climate justice teaches us the importance that this struggle has for the youngest generation. These struggles cannot stop to school, even though it's under attack today. But they need to think directly to the fact that the system has to change if we want to defend our future. Neoliberalism is destroying the planet and the societies that inhabit it. Our resistance needs to be able to start from the bottom, from the people, to act locally, but even to think globally. This is the only way we have as students to make sure that climate justice is taken into account when decisions are being made. We will take action during the pre-COP and Youth for Climate summits to make sure that our voices, the voices of young people, are heard, because we cannot wait anymore to defend our future.
Ce l'ho con I nomi, mi servono I nomi. Lo so. Okay, their translation is working, so let's wait a minute for people to hear the translation too. Raga. we're ready for the next speech, which will be from Greenpeace Italia, from Annabella, that we all call Boo, so I will say Boo. So if you're ready, can you hear me? Okay, just a second and I'll tell you when to start. Just 1 second. Okay, 1 second. Okay, you can start.
Okay, hi, I'm Boo from Greenpeace Italy, and for us, climate justice is the main topic since Greenpeace was born in the 70s. And for us, fighting for climate justice means that we fight for the climate, but also for the workers that are exploited from the biggest polluters, the biggest companies, and we also defend the communities that first suffers from climate change, and from this we have climate migration. So when you talk about migration, you can't talk also about climate change. Same about women and LGBT minorities, because they're the first who suffered from the effect of climate change, because capitalism puts them in the more disadvantaged position, so they're the first to suffer. Also, we know that there are countries where climate change is more effective than in other countries, like for example in the Philippines, where a few years ago, after a hurricane destroyed half of Philippines, they took in court with the help of Greenpeace and Amnesty International and other NGOs, more than 50s of the biggest polluters for violating their human rights. One of these 50 biggest polluters is Eni, the biggest polluter in Italy. So when you talk about climate justice, you know that what happened in your city, in your little city, can affect the other side of the world. So we are all connected in this. When we talk about social justice and climate justice, we talk also about, for example, deforestation, because it's not just cutting trees, but you all know that from deforestation we have more CO2, and now we are living in a pandemic, and these kind of pandemics are caused by zoonosis. So when you are too violent, I don't know if it's the right word to say this, but for me it's violent with the nature around you, the consequences are that we all suffer from this, and it's all connected. For us, the main reason, that the main thing that we ask to the countries that are sitting in the COP is to listen to people and to listen who lives in the countries where things are happening, because COPs they are not perfect, but they are the more useful tool that we have to make effective laws to stop climate change. Apart from this, to close my intervention, we would like to invite all of you to a meeting on the 22nd of May, a virtual meeting, to talk about a climate camp in Milan that we are building together with Ecologia Politica, or Political Ecology in English, and XR Milan. And we are trying to have the more intersectional approach that we can, because for us fighting for social justice you need to have an intersectional approach. So we would like to build this climate camp in Milan together with whom wants to work with us on this, because we will need to be a lot of NGOs, associations, and people that care about social justice, not just climate justice. So on the 20th of May, follow Ecologia Politica for more information, because we don't have, for now, places to find infos yet, because we are working on it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Boo. Now we'll have another Italian organization, in this case is Legambiente, from Lombardia, so this area, the north of Italy, and we have Lucio.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Just a second, are you going to speak in English?
Yes.
Okay, you're going to speak in English. So just give me a second to tell the translators. Okay, puoi iniziare? Okay, there you go.
Can I go?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks to FFF for inviting us. I'm Lucio, and I'm part of Legambiente. For those who don't know Legambiente, Legambiente is an Italian environmental association founded in 1980, and I'm really glad to participate today because climate justice is a central issue for anyone involved in the environment. As perfectly explained by the activists around the world today, when we speak about climate change and global heating, today we know that the heating is global, but the consequences of the climate emergency are not the same for everyone. And the poorest countries and the most vulnerable people in rich countries are the first to be affected. The issue of climate justice is therefore fundamental because, as Alexander Langer explained 30 years ago, ecological conversion can only occur if it appears socially desirable. And our task as environmentalism is to build an ecological transition that takes into account the many inequalities of our world: geographical inequalities, social inequalities, economic, gender, racial, generational inequalities, as the FF explained to us. And starting from this perspective, as Legambiente, we are part of the Italian Forum for Inequalities and Diversity, a forum with many organizations that aims to design public policies and collective actions in order to reduce inequalities and enhance everyone's freedom. And also in our campaigns, we always start from the idea that environmental and social issues are inseparable. So, just as an example, when we propose an energy community project, we always think about projects aimed most of all, above all, at those citizens who live in a condition of fuel poverty. When we ask to create a new mobility system, we do it because of environmental reasons, but also because the freedom to move without depending on a car and fossil fuel is a fundamental element to participate in the democratic life of a city and a country. And when we propose our tree planting campaigns, we often go and plant in neglected places to underline that the difference is not just between center and suburbs, but between places that we take care or not take care of. And when we speak, for example, about circular economy and denounce the throwaway culture, we denounce it because that culture involves not only objects, but also human beings. And that's the reason why an historic campaign such as Clean Up the World has become Clean Up the World from Prejudices, to underline how taking care of the environment means taking care of the people who live in that environment. And in general, the effort that we are trying to make as Lega Ambiente for the COP26 is to use every occasion that we have of a debate with politicians, with citizens, to connect environmental and social side of our proposal, starting from a fact that we cannot neglect anymore. In front of the climate emergency, physics and politics are no longer separable. And our task is to repeat that in front of climate emergency and climate justice, we cannot turn our head and say, it doesn't concern me. We all are involved, and as the activists from all over the world are saying to all of us, also today, we have just one thing to do. We have to act, and we have to do it right here and right now. So thank you very much for this occasion, and bye everyone.
Thank you very much for another wonderful speech. As you can see, our live painting is going on, and we will give you the last final picture at the end of this assembly, and of course you will be able to see it in on our social pages. So now we have another contribution, this time from Extinction Rebellion, which possibly all of you already know. This is Extincion RebellionMilan, so they live here with us. And I give the floor to Alice, if she can hear me.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, just give us a second.
Sure.
Try. Okay.
Can I start?
Yes. Yes, you can start.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm Alice from Extinction Rebellion Milano. I'm sure you all know the movement. We are just a small chapter in Milan, but hopefully we'll grow bigger and bigger by the time we get to pre-COP. So XR as a movement has 3 requests for the government. The first one is to talk about climate justice and put it in the center of the public attention, and within the COP26 context, of course, our request, our demand would be to put this topic at the center of the discussion inside the event and outside, and be willing to admit that profit and growth as goals contrast with the widespread well-being, safety, and happiness of all. Our second request, as you can see, we have visual aids, like digital in the sense that we use our fingers. So our second request is the demand to take action against all activities, which we all know are polluting and poisoning our planet and already affecting people in certain areas of the world, in order for new solutions to emerge and slowly but surely become our new reality. So, of course, stop of extraction of fossil fuels and intensive and chemical heavy farming and overproduction in general would be these activities. And our third request suggests a radically democratic way to achieve climate justice. And it is the institution of citizen assemblies at all levels of government, from the small and local municipalities to the nation's governments. Working together as a movement of movements, what we would love to be part of would be a process of trust building and building deeper connection amongst us activists. We have slightly different goals maybe and slightly different practices, but we all strive towards the same end, which is the building of deeply ecological relations where every part of the whole is in network with the others. And just like in an organism,
is both essential and in cooperation with the others in order for the whole system to be thriving. What we as a movement are able to offer this community are the two pillars of our movement. On one hand, non-violent direct actions, or NVDA, or ADNV in Italian, which is civil disobedience, just like Alice from Glasgow Agreement was talking about before. We use non-violent direct actions as a strategy to protest, not only because non-violence is a principle shared by many of us, but also as a technique which has proven to be the most successful in the last about 100 years of fights and struggles, more or less. On the other hand, like Mitzi was saying before, we too try hard to deconstruct the presence of this toxic system which we all carry in our minds, our eyes, and our words. In order to do so, we use practices such as facilitation, which we call, or what we call regenerative transformation of conflicts, or something called the work that reconnects, and many other practices through which we challenge ourselves to go beyond the patterns that we try to fight outside our bodies and minds, but which also are often reproduced by us when we interact. We call this regenerative culture or cultures, and this is another fundamental part of what we would love to share with whoever will take action alongside us before and at the pre-COP event. And we hope that we can learn from each other on this topic as well as we move forward beyond that. And recently, we have seen so many platforms such as this one sprout like seeds here in Milano, and many collectives and networks of movements begin to appear. And we've been involved with a few others as well, and to try and think and come up with ideas of how to get to pre-COP prepared. As Bu was saying before, we've been involved with Greenpeace and Ecologia Politica and we had this idea to build a climate camp here in Milano. And we feel it could be a place where principles, there we go, where principles such as regenerative culture, radical democracy, and sharing of experiences and practices could thrive and spread across the movements and beyond. And this is just one of, I'm sure, many initiatives and situations which will take place in those days. And for the months to come, our wish is that we can all come together and take a stand in front of this event and continue on with all of our activities more connected and aligned than before, also as we move on from that. So thank you.
Thank you for this very nice presentation. I love the paper slides. It's not a PowerPoint, it's paper, and I mean, I will use it some other time. I will steal the idea. So next, we have contribute from Recommon, precisely from Antonio. Antonio, can you hear me?
I can hear you very well.
Yes.
I speak in English as well.
Okay, cool. Okay, just a second, and you can start. Thank you.
Thanks to you and for the opportunity to intervene in the meeting. I'm Antonio with Recommon. We are a collective here in Italy which conducts investigation and promotes campaigns against what we call the Dodge economy, extractivism and devastation of territories, both in the global north and the global south, which are caused by indiscriminate exploitation of natural resources and major public and private infrastructure projects. So climate justice for us means primarily tackling the responsibilities of Italian fossil corporations and financial institutions for their operations at home, as well as abroad in solidarity with affected communities. And impacts of unfolding climate change are uneven, as impacts of fossil fuels extraction, we have to say, have been uneven for many decades. And many communities, often in the global south, have been devastated and exploited for the advantage of few groups and individuals living somewhere else, often in the global north. And we know that urgently tackling the climate crisis requires to profoundly transform our society. And this will hardly be a win-win game. And unfortunately, there will be winners and losers. And recently, there's been a lot of talks about ecological and just transition, particularly in Italy and Europe. But we need to wonder first about whose transition are they talking about, at the benefit of whom and at the expenses of whom else? And will it be a corporate-led transition or a community-based one? And major fossil corporations are facing, in our view, an existential challenge, resisting change and adapting their narrative, talking about 2050 for not acting now. Net zero by 2050 is the new mantra in town. It does not mean real zero emissions, and unfortunately is too little, too late, and too much greenwashed. And global finance and governments are buying into this toxic narrative. The risk is to have full solutions to climate change and locking these in for decades to come. The net zero logic is very relevant from an economic justice perspective. A large role is given to offsetting projects, compensating emission from business as usual through carbon capture and storage projects or REDD+ forest projects. This put at risk local communities, often in the global south, where untested technologies will be deployed, which have not worked so far, but also indigenous communities that will be kicked off from their forest with the wrong assumption that they want to destroy them in order to allow polluters instead to keep emitting more than they should in the global north. This is a scam which is intolerable and should be rejected. The net zero commitments by all majors and utilities are also promoting false solutions, such as gas as a transition fuel, thus locking in a carbon-intensive model for decades to come. Fugitive methane emissions of fossil gas have a global warming potential comparing with emission from burning coal. Gas has to be phased out as coal, thus making space for decentralized and community-driven renewables. Let's take the example of Eni, the largest Italian oil company. They claim they will be net zero in 2050, but then 80% of their business will still be in 2050 formed by fossil gas. Or Snam, the Italian gas transmission system operator, the largest in Europe, which does not count emissions of the gas it transports through the thousands of kilometers of its pipelines. However, they claim they will be net zero in 2040. And they claim there will be hydrogen in the end will be fine and fix all the problems. Despite the system will remain inefficient, very little democratic, fully centralized, but most important, it will still be based, for most of it, on fossil hydrogen produced from gas. This is just a joke. And through these fairy tales, fossil corporations are still able to trap billions of euros from main banks and investors for their fossil operation. So finance becomes complicit in killing the climate, instead of being a powerful lever for the good by shifting its portfolio and supporting the transformation we need in society. As regards Italy, the financial sector is responsible for finance emissions, which are higher than those from the power sector of our country. And two major Italian banks, Intesa Sanpaolo and UniCredit, are far out the main emitters, including for their finance emissions and operation outside Italy. Intesa has still limited commitments to phase out support for coal companies, while UniCredit still invests a lot in oil and gas. And General Insurance is also a key financial institution from Italy, which is resisting cutting off support for coal companies in Poland and Czech Republic. But in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic and the economic recovery we're discussing, new financial threats are emerging. Either directly corporations or the banks supporting them are benefiting from new public guarantees or public financing from the government to back companies' liquidity and the expansion of their operations. Most of public financial institutions do not have policies in place limiting support for fossil fuels. This is the case of national public investment banks or export credit agencies, which in Italy are called Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, CDP or SACE. Not to talk about hundreds of billions of euros, which will be challenged in Italy through the EU Next Generation Fund and associated recovery and resilience facility, and we don't know which conditionality are imposed so that money doesn't go to fossil fuel companies. Italy will not just be the co-chair of COP26 this year together with the United Kingdom. while you also hold the presidency of the G20. Despite the rhetoric to fight climate change, the group of 20 most powerful economies are proposing a reboot of globalization to accelerate global trade and investment through the construction of mega corridors connecting extraction, production, and consumption hubs. The climate cost of such a global grand plan is huge and incompatible with any commitment under the Paris Agreement. So to conclude, I think we really have to join forces, as has been said, this year, which is a crucial year for four goals. We need to expose greenwashing of corporate powers and keep them out from the COP process. Second, we need to oppose and minimize the net while pretending the zero emission as soon as possible, while bringing solidarity and justice to those still affected by fossil fuel extraction and unfolding climate change. Thirdly, we need to dry up private finance available for fossil corporate dinosaurs. And finally, fourthly, through the recovery and the pandemic, we have to reclaim public finance to transform fairly our society and make them finally resilient and just. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Antonio. That was very insightful. And now we have a feminist movement, which you may know as with its Spanish name, which is Ni Una Menos. Okay, and in Italy it's called Non Una Di Meno, which is basically the same thing translated in Italian. And so we will have a speech from them because, of course, when we talk about intersectionality, we also talk about feminism and how a feminist approach may help everyone, not only, of course, women, as you may know. So we're waiting for our speaker, Alice. She's coming. In the meantime, you can still see our live painting going on. I hope we can be done by the day so you can all see the final result. And you can have a final picture that can remind you of this first big step towards pre-COP and COP. If you have any questions, just write it in the comments of the stream you're watching, and our activists will be able to gather them and to send them to the activists and people who spoke, so that we can make our best to give you as much answers as we can. Because as you may know, we are hosting people from all over the world, and therefore we don't really know when the people from our parts of the world are sleeping or having their normal life activities. So if they aren't here to answer, we will gather your questions and give it to them. And hopefully they can make a post or a video if a question is very important to the people who are listening. And of course, there will be another step to this process, to this route, and we will be able to rediscuss the questions you have there all together again. And now I give the floor to Una Di Meno Milano.
Ciao a tutti, tutte e tutto. Io sono Alice.
Ciao, hello everybody. I'm Alice from Non Una Di Meno Milano. We are a feminist, trans-feminist group, and we watch the world with an intersectional eye. we know that this approach is going to be the right approach to freedom for all the bodies, those ones that are not heteronormative and conform to be able to be free in this world, and the ecosystem of the world we live in. In fact, since the first year of our organization in Italy of Una Di Meno, we decided to divide ourselves in groups that could understand in a very specific way the gender discriminations that we live, and one was very important, the one that was focused on the environment and the connection between gender oppression and climate crisis. We live in a world that believes in the supremacy of men on women, on profit, on environment, of white people on black people, and on abilistic way of seeing the world. We believe that the bodies that fight for being considered, even if they are not considered available for this world, profitable for this world, need to be taken in consideration when we talk about social justice. We fight for the liberation of gender, for the separation of those labels on our bodies. We can talk about environment without talking about gender justice. We cannot talk about exploitation of lands without talking about the exploitation of bodies and life of those one that are fighting for a change of the system that oppress us. The minimal level of connection that we have is exploitation as a word and as a practice. The colonial view of the word, of I came first, of supremacy, is destroying us. Colonialism and capitalists have made the earth a place that is not sustainable for and livable for everybody. We live in a world that think and see people and ecosystem as something that can be profitable only for the rich ones. The capitalists before and the neoliberalism system now base their existence on the systemic extractivist activities and exploitation of bodies, of people, of racialized people. But the invisible hand on the market was only the exploitation of lands and people in the colonized countries and continents. We know that these are not just effects, but were political decisions. Also, the labor, the domestic labor, and the care labor in Italy and in the world is only on women, and this is also an exploitation of women labor that has no stop and no end. In Italy, we know that environment is embodied by women and by all the communities that are fighting to defend their lands and to survive. Lands. The land is actually giving fuel to the land itself as a mother for all the ecosystem, for the human beings. So we don't need a greenwashing attitude. We don't need the people that tell us that they will take care of the planet. We will take care of the planet. We don't need anybody else to do it. For this reason, Una Di Meno Milan will guarantee its contribution to the cooperation open platform, to all the preparation of the pre-summit, so the pre-COP and the Youth for Climate, and we will get there ready to get together with Fridays for Future and all the other activists in order to take also the words of women and LGBT communities and marginalized community to this conference. Thank you so much.
Okay, can you hear me properly? Great. Okay, so next we have another local association, NGO, which is called Manitese, that means open-handed, something like that. And it's basically a symbol of help. So let's hear what is their philosophy of help and how they plan to act during the pre-COP and the COP and their insights on what, as citizens and activists, might want to do. I should give the floor to Josué now. Can you hear me? Un secondo, one sec. You're going to speak Italian?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Un minuto, 1 minute. 1 minute, we have translators getting ready. Just 1 second. Okay, 1 second.
Start. There are three major issues while talking about climate justice and environmental topics. The continuous steal of words that we're assisting and we're participating to. Ivana Sheen, on her last book, is referring to as all the words and political concepts that political movements and social parts, since the Social Forum of 2001, they're constantly stolen by us, by the dominant media. Words such as green, sovereignty, food, sustainability. These words are constantly abused and they're now empty of their original meaning. The concept of environment. Smart agriculture, for example, is a way of using these words and manipulating them in order to push for further interest, whereas obscuring and taking out the original meaning. The corporate capture, this is how we refer to this action of stealing the meaning. So the private sector is abusing and entering these rooms of the political decision. So while they're supposed to take in actions and taking in consideration the main interest for the communities, these political actions are deviated in order to profit for the major companies. So often we refer to the wallet, to our own wallet, to people putting hands in our pockets. So the idea that the market, the paradigm of market, the offer can modify the demand. So the idea of reducing the number of people working and moving by car and reducing the number of chemical tests rather than biological tests, this could allow to have neutral results. So the companies who have emitted the 75% of CO2 emissions are now being ignored by this. The second most important fact is the neutrality of science, the political neutrality of science. So NGOs always recall this. In order to change and transform science into actual acts and physical actions, this means to pose ourselves as NGOs as mediators between the political decisions and those who actually take actions. So we must be mediators between these two major actors. So political decisions are taken by parliaments and politicians in certain rooms. However, today, this COP26 can be an event without empty promises. With money, in July there will be a Young 20, this youth summit of G20. Let's all remember that the G20 has in the three major points the climate change just as much as the 28th September, another youth COP and a pre-COP. So all these environments and all these events, even before that they actually have the actual name that they currently have, together we all aim to give meaning, give the original meaning to these words, this meaning that has been stolen. These words have been emptied. So we have to go overcome the principle that our economical interests, personal as citizen, as a communities, must not be the priority. So our stories must be told. We must be mediators, and it's difficult for us to actually take action in this role. The constant and corroborant, it can be you. It can be you. Youth movements, youth members of these important NGOs and organizations. We are building this new possible world. Thank you so much for listening.
Another movement which is called Asud, and so our next speaker, he's from Asud and should be here. Just a second. In the meantime, you can see the drawing is almost over, and you can also see in the corner. Let's go on with the description. Our standard chartered, cleanup standard chartered sign. Check out that campaign. Standard Chartered is a bank, is an English bank who's still extracting coal and damaging MAPA in this way. So please check out the campaign and join us in our tweet storms and online actions. Please follow the Cleanup Standard Charter campaign. And now I give the floor to Asud.
Devo mettere questo? Well, first of all, thanks for inviting us, and we are very proud to be here on the Climate Open platform. I am Tiziano, and speaking on behalf of ASUD, a non-profit organization based in Rome, and born in 2003 to promote climate, environment, and justice in Italy and abroad. I am the campaign manager of Giudizio Universale, The Last Judgment, the campaign we want to present you right now on this platform. What is it, The Last Judgment? It's the first climate litigation against the Italian state. So, the starting point is the inaction of all Italian governments of the last decades, of all governments. Italy is one of the main GHG emitters in Europe, and so in this sense, our state should have assumed higher commitments in terms of emission reductions and system changes. But they haven't done enough to change the course. And so we decided to develop a legal action against the Italian state for its insufficient actions to tackle climate change. We believe that our state has the duty to protect the rights of its citizens, to a sustainable future, and to protect the planet. So, talking about the campaign Giudizio Universale, I give you right now the website is www.giudiziouniversale.eu. This campaign was launched less than 2 years ago and now accounts 100 promoters among associations, civil organizations, networks from all around Italy, among which also Fridays for Future Italy is promoting it. And we want to promote the development of a legal action against the Italian state. Plaintiffs, so as to say people that really joined the legal action, include over 150 citizens, youth and children, and about 20 representatives of national non-profit organizations. Giudizio Universale is not a single action. We are part of a European movement, only the last among many climate litigations developing in the last years all around the world, and targeting both states and multinationals responsible for climate inaction. The recent climate litigation campaign in France, L'Affaire du siècle, has collected more than 3 million signatures, and we need to do the same in Italy this year. We want to stress the fact that Giudizio Universale is not a campaign of ASUD. We created the tool, we created the platform to reach a common objective. This is so a shared campaign. Every one of you can be a promoter, as a person, as citizen, as association, and as a citizens movement. We hope so, and we are here to build a strategy together in the following months. Our climate action will be presented in the coming months, during the summer, and we will be very happy to bring this initiative at the service of the upcoming activities of Fridays for Future Italy towards the COP Young and the pre-COP, and not only. Thanks again for inviting us today, as it represents a great opportunity to reinforce our cooperation. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, our next speaker is not really a speaker, it's a video from Eco delle città. And we're waiting for translation, so please hang on a moment. We are closing at the moment, we are almost done. Unfortunately, it is very likely that Greta won't be able to join us today. There's probably been a setback, but we will expect to hear from her soon, and maybe join us for our next meeting together. We hope that everything is fine, and thank you again, of course, Greta, for building this movement with us and giving us the inspiration to fight. We want to start thanking the people who participated, who took place from all over the world, all the Fridays for Future groups that have joined today. We're waiting for our last speech, so don't leave right now. We will go on for 5-10 minutes, but we're waiting for the translation and the next guest. Okay. Let's start the video.
Basically, this project, one of them is repop, and the other one is Caravana Salvativo. Basically, I'll be talking about the repop. Repop is a project operated by migrants mainly from Africa. These young people, mainly from Africa, that every day from Mondays to Saturdays come to the market of Porta Palazzo and also other markets around the city to collect fruits and vegetables that the vendors are not able to sell for that particular day. And they will give to us, we will collect all these stocks and then put them together, select the best quality that are still eatable and distribute it to people in need. Actually, not also people in need, but anybody that is ambientalist and want to help reduce the waste of food, then is also welcome. Also about the Caravana Salvativo.
I'm the one about Caravana Salvativo. Caravana Salvativo is a project that we developed since a year, since the first hard lockdown here in Turin. It basically consists in collecting food from the wholesale market. We get in touch with the companies and with a small van we collect all the food we can. Obviously this food would be thrown away if we were not there, so we rescued this food that is still eatable, and we distributed around the city of Turin, thanks to around 20 20 associations spread out throughout the city.
Actually, we are very happy about the success we have over the years, both from the differentiation of waste or the management of waste and also the reduction of food waste. Actually, we have good numbers that show our intervention is very, very important in this aspect.
A big hug from Milan, from Turin, to Milan, to all the participants of this event. Ciao!
On the part of the Akamori, greetings to all.
Okay, we're almost here. Now I know that many of you asked what is written in the mural. There are different words related to what we said today and what they were doing down there painting. So you can see the words water, wave, poetry, and much more. I think that our artists decided to let them to be guided by the flow and the inspiration that came directly from your words here, and that is the result. Of course, when we will post the photo, we will explain again the concept behind it after having talked directly with them, and you can see you will be able to see it much clearly. So let's start recapping and creating the synthesis around what we said today. First of all, we need to apologize again for any technical issues we might have had. We are young, we are students, so it's all bottom up, it's all grassroots. So we try to do our best, and we will share that the next time, because there is going to be a next time. The Climate Open platform is not over. We go on until we build really something together. We start building content, and then we go to logistic, and so there will be another time, and you will see improvements in the technical aspects of this live stream and online assembly. And also we want to thank again everyone who took part in this assembly. We want to thank people from different areas of the world who were maybe in a bad time to speak, but they spoke anyway to bring their message to the rest of the world. It is amazing to be able to join our forces and try to build something together, because we know that we are going through a crisis that is affecting the whole world, but especially some countries, some people that sometimes are depicted as voiceless, but they're just unheard, as Mitzi said. So this is what must be done right now. We must show that these people are not voiceless, but simply unheard. And this is something that has to be quite clear to our leaders. There is not going to be a conference of party. It's not a conference of party if every party can participate. If vaccines are distributed unequally, and if not everyone is able to access digitally, if it's going to be a digital COP, it's going to be an unfair COP. It's not going to bring about the solutions that we all want to achieve. And if we don't try to tackle the climate crisis under the lenses of intersectionality and social justice, we won't be able to solve it, because we will just reiterate the same patterns of inequality and injustice that created this same crisis. So this is the key message that I think came out from our speech. As of today, they're telling me that Eco delle città can and will have a short speech, so it's not over yet, yay! Okay. Ilaria? Okay. Perfect, just a second. Let us turn on your video. Are you speaking Italian or English? English. Cool. Just a second. Okay, thank you. You can start.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for inviting me to this event. And this is important discussion for us, for the planet, for our relationship. In this short presentation, we will tell you about an experience, Carovana Salvacibo, that was born in Milano and also in Torino last year, during the pandemic period of April 2020. I am Ilaria Caelli and I am collaborating with the association Eco delle città, which works with environmental issues. I am an educator and a psychologist, and I think it's very important to make these skills available to the environment too. And it's important to awaken the sense of belonging and interdependence with the environment. It's important to develop new circular economy strategies of exchanging, reuse against waste, and respect the planet. And this project was born with three main solidarity and ecological objectives. One, recover food surplus. Two, support people in economy difficulty and food emergency. And three, generate a collaborative system between active citizens. And now we are a network of more than 20 realities, including cooperatives, church, political association, non-profit organization, informal groups. And 2 days a week, more than 40 people collect fruit and vegetables from wholesalers and the general market of Milan, Porto Mercato Milano, and then redistribute it among the families in need. And we recover fruits and vegetables that will be thrown away within the general market. And on average, we recover around 700 kilograms of food per week. And so far, we collected around 113 tons in 1 year. Each association distributes fruit and vegetables at their headquarters around the city in a different way. There are those who prepare bags and those who cook ready meals. And thanks to the collaboration of all, we are able to reach 1,300 families in Milan. Avoiding waste means respecting the resources, the natures, offer us in an overabundant way, and we produce more than we consume. Thanks to this initiative, a network of active people and citizens was born with the common goal of distributing food for free, reducing waste and helping each other. And I wish a positive contamination of these practices here and now in this period, which we are called to a clear changing and clear stand. Thank you.
Ilaria, giusto? No, devo chiudere l'assemblea e poi facciamo SMS. Chiudo l'assemblea e poi fate l'intervento. Ok. Okay, so this was the last the last speech. Let me just say a few final words, and then we will have the space that is hosting us at the moment, Spazio di Mutuo Soccorso, that is going to say another few words. We, again, are really, really happy about this afternoon, and I mean, afternoon here, but these few hours together in whatever part you are in the world went. We are so proud of being among such amazing people that came along today and gave us such a wonderful bunch of insights. We need people like you. The world needs people like you, and need all the people listening and watching this video, this live stream, to join together and fight for climate justice. This is radical. This is our existential fight. This will define not only our survival, but also who we want to be as human beings. For this reason, it's so much about social justice. And for this reason, we have to make so that the voices of MAPA and people that are suffering from the consequences of the climate crisis are heard and are put in front of every other need. Because it's our historic responsibility to do this. So again, if you have any suggestion, any feedback, please just let us know in the comments, or just write to our page, write to our email. We are available. We want to listen to you. Every suggestion is golden for us. And we hope to see you again in the next meeting, in the next Climate Open Platform Assembly that we will announce in a few days. So stay tuned. And now I give the word again to Spazio di Mutuo Soccorso. Thank you again for being here, and please keep on fighting and just stay connected.
Thank you. Thank you to all people that participated today, and we are very, very happy to because we have hosted today this so important meeting rooted in struggle from all over the world that desire to say something and to make a strong voice against the COP26 international gathering, a voice that spoke the climate movement and that propone the climate movement issue, the issue that a lot of people from all over the world today, from the MAPA country and from a very large movement, a global movement, spoke to us. Decolonize, fight social injustice, all these global, all those global issues are linked with the climate struggle. Mutual aid space every day practice metropolitan zapatism, practice anti-racism and feminist struggle. Do something to change the reality every day, also through circular economy practice and activity. So we do this because we are part, thanks to Cantiere and since more than 20 years of movement. We was born during the movement of movement in 2001 when Genoa happened, Genoa 2001, and since that days we always continue to support movement, global movement, able to think local and think global, and act local, like Friday for Future surely is. So thank you very much to all.
SMS, Spazio di Mutuo Soccorso, is a mutual aid project that takes place in a huge headquarter in Milan. This experience was born in 2013 thanks to a committee for city rights against eviction and gentrification. In this place, SMS, there are different projects. A popular gym, a swap market that fights fast fashion and promotes recycle and reuse, a popular university with different courses and a languages school, a buying collective that connects customers with farmers of the area, a playground for children, a bicycle repair, and much, much more.
SMS is a resistant community, in which inhabitants and volunteers cooperate to build up an experience outside of market and business logics, in which exchanges and solidarity are the guidelines to reach autonomy and freedom. The mutual aid space is a place where the circular economy is experimented. The clothes are reused and brought back to life. The garden in the courtyard provides products for food distribution to the needy. The Solidarity and Popular Purchase Group puts small agricultural producers and customers in contact, avoiding the large-scale distribution chain.
For these reasons, SMS is the ideal place to host the first of a series of conferences about climate justice. A place free from the market dynamics that lead us to the climate crisis. A place that with its own existence is a proof that another world is possible. A beacon of hope that promises to lead us in the right direction.